And in today's video, we're gonna dive into what it costs to travel for 1 month in Mexico. So last month I spent living in Mexico, and during that entire month I spent tracking all of my living costs, from accommodation to transportation, groceries, entertainment, even my phone bill. And in today's video we're going to dive into that. Now, just to remind you guys that these are my expenses. You guys can live completely different lifestyle in Mexico and you can spend way less or way more than me. But this video will give you guys an idea of what a typical month of expenses is gonna be living in Mexico, specifically in Playa del Carmen and Tulum, which is where I spent living most of my time in. Now, starting off with number one, which is gonna be probably your biggest expense, is your accommodation costs. I spent 2 weeks in Playa del Carmen. I chose to use Airbnb for my accommodation. I'd messaged the host and I had asked for a 2-week rate. Typically, if you can, contact the host beforehand because they're typically looking to find guests that are staying for a longer period of time. So if you can get a 2-week or 4-week stay, they're probably going to give you a discount for that long-term booking. So I found a really nice place. You guys can check out the Airbnb tour. I'll link it right above here. It cost me about $21 or $22 a night, I believe. But most of the accommodation in Playa del Carmen will be about $20 to $25 a night. And you can find a private room for that cost. I was really surprised as to what I got for the amount of money that I paid. I got a private pool, there was a rooftop. The host was amazing and it was in a really good area, just a few minutes walk from 5th Avenue. If there's anything I would do differently, I would probably book a accommodation that's closer to 5th Avenue, because 5th Avenue is really where everything is, from the bars to restaurants. So if you can, try to find accommodation around that area. Now, for the following 2 weeks, I stayed in Tulum. So 2 weeks later, I moved down to Tulum. I chose to stay in downtown Tulum. I did not stay in the beach zone and the hotel zone because I think it's a little overpriced and it was way out of my budget for that amount. But let me tell you, if you can find a place in the hotel zone, do it, because the beaches in Tulum are absolutely gorgeous. You will not regret it. But again, you are gonna pay the price if you choose to find a place there. Now, the accommodation I chose to stay in Tulum were 2 places. For the first weekend in Tulum, I chose to stay at the Mayan Monkey Hotel. It's a hostel and a hotel, and it was by far my favorite place to stay in Tulum. It was right off the main road, so it only took about 10-minute taxi ride to get into the hotel zone. And they had everything from great music, food. I had a great sleep for a hostel, actually. And you guys can check out the tour right up here. I'll link it right above. If you find yourself moving down to Tulum, I would highly recommend that place because I had no regrets living in there. And the Wi-Fi was actually pretty good compared to Tulum standards. Now, for the remainder of my 2-week stay, I chose to stay at Meteora. It cost me $9 a night, which is incredibly cheap, and you're not gonna find a place that's cheaper than that, I think, in Tulum especially. It was a bit overcrowded at first, but they moved me into a private room, which the staff were amazing. The place is brand new, so it's really gorgeous, but because it's brand new, there were some quirks that I wasn't happy about, but I would still recommend it if you're planning to stay, maybe for 2 or 3 nights. To get a full in-depth review, you guys can just click up here to watch the full tour of that. To end it off, my accommodation for the entire month was $574.93, which is actually a really good price, being that I stayed at 3 different places actually. And I could have probably gotten a lot cheaper if I chose to stay in one city rather than breaking up my stay into 2 weeks each. So just something to think about. Moving on to the second cost, is gonna be transportation. For transportation, Mexico is actually pretty easy to get around, I believe. Starting off with Playa del Carmen, everything in Playa del Carmen is pretty much walking distance. If you're using taxis in Playa del Carmen, you're probably lazy or it's really hot outside, which it tends to be. But best way to get around Playa del Carmen is probably walking or renting a bicycle. There's a bicycle company, it's called Bike Playa, I believe is the name of it. You can get an app on your phone and you can rent it by day. I believe the daily cost of that was about 90 to 100 pesos per day. And that's the typical price for a bicycle to rent in Mexico. And for that amount, you can ride the bike as often as you want for up to 30 minutes each time. Moving on to Tulum though, the transportation is a bit more difficult. If you're staying in downtown Tulum, you definitely need a car or a bike to get into the hotel zone. If you're renting a bike, you can rent it for about $5 a day. I rented a really affordable bike. It wasn't in the best condition, but it got me around. And it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to get down to the beach zone in Tulum on a bike. Or you can rent a taxi. Now, be careful with the taxis because I got ripped off. Well, I wouldn't say ripped off my first day in Tulum because honestly, I just didn't do the research. And the taxi driver said it's gonna cost me 300 pesos to get from downtown to the beach zone, and which is false. I didn't negotiate, which is my fault. The typical cost of a taxi to get from the hotel zone to downtown Tulum and vice versa is 150 pesos. So don't go any more than 150 pesos. Now, when I did take a trip to Cozumel, we had to pay for a ferry ride back and forth. And in addition to that, we rented a Jeep, which cost us about $30 for the day, I believe. Now, next category is groceries. I spent $59.67. Now, you might think that's really, really low. And that's because I actually eat out most of the time. I don't spend that much money on groceries. Most of the cost from groceries was actually going to mini marts and small convenience stores because I was going there mainly to buy drinks like tea, soda, and beer. So most of that cost is coming from that, with the exception of hurricane prep. So during the whole month of Mexico, there was probably like 3 hurricanes I had to go through. So I had to prep for the hurricane because of electricity going out. So I did have to go out and stock up on groceries at least 2 times. And so that's where that cost comes from. Now the next cost is going to be restaurants and bars. So as I said, most of the time in Mexico, I did go out, and most of the time I travel, I go out all the time because honestly, it's just more convenient and I'm not much of a cook. So, and as you can see, the cost reflects it. So I spent $328.25 from food alone. I think honestly, I would spend more in the US if I was going out every single day. So this is, I think, pretty affordable. Now, just to give you guys an idea of a typical day out, what the cost would be, most restaurants and bars in Playa del Carmen and Tulum are open. They do have COVID-19 precautions like hand sanitizing right before you go in, and some even do temperature checks before you sit down. Just to give you an idea of most of the food I ate, I had tacos. Tacos, you can probably pay about 10 to 20 pesos if you're getting it from a local spot. For a little more expensive tacos, you're gonna be paying probably 30 pesos each. Tortas are really amazing, I love them. And those cost about 50 to 80 pesos depending on what kind of torta you got. Beers cost about 15 to 20 pesos. And you would pay a little more, maybe like 30 pesos if you're actually at a restaurant, 30 or 40 pesos. Now moving on to entertainment costs. For entertainment, this really covers basically cenotes and the mangroves that we went. Most of the entertainment I did was cenote hunting basically, and you can see that from all my Mexico videos, how many cenote vlogs I did. Aside from that, we did a mangrove trip where we rented a private boat and visited the mangroves in Tulum area. So you can watch the video right up here. It was an amazing experience. I would highly recommend it. We were the only people there, and it was basically just a lazy river. It was an awesome experience. I would totally do it. And the cost of the entertainment was $70, so pretty affordable. I really didn't spend that much money on entertainment. I think most of my vlogs I spent money on just going out, eating, and exploring, so that's why entertainment was so low. Now, moving into the phone bill, I think Mexico has some of the most affordable phone plans. So when I flew into Cancun, one thing I noticed is that in Cancun airport, there's no SIM cards. So most airports will have a company selling SIM cards. In Cancun, that was not the case, so just something to know because you are gonna have to find a taxi or take a bus down to Playa del Carmen or Tulum. Now, the SIM card costs, I believe, 150 pesos with about 500 megabytes of data, I believe. And to top it up, all you have to do is go to a convenience store, any convenience store at all, and you just go up to the register and tell them, I'm sorry, I'm about to butcher this. Telcel paquet sin limites 100 pesos, or however much you want to top up on your data. So basically I had Telcel, I had great coverage throughout my entire stay in Mexico. Great company, and very easy to top up and get data in Mexico. And last but not least is gonna be Miscellaneous. This really is anything that didn't go into one of these categories. So I only spent $13.48, and that included laundry, which I spent $2 on. Some of the cheapest laundry I've ever experienced was in Mexico. We did have to pay for gas for the Jeep in Cozumel, and that was like $6. And last but not least is my haircut. My $5 haircut video, if you want to watch it up here, really affordable and kind of decent. So I spent $5 on that, and that pretty much sums up Miscellaneous. Now, all in all, the total for the month of October cost me $1,182.33. You can probably spend a lot more on accommodation than I did, or you could spend a lot less. It's really up to you. But one thing to note though is that this does not include my flight to Mexico. So I spent $185.46 to Mexico. I flew from Baltimore one way on United Airlines to Cancun. And so really I spent close to $1,300 for the month, I guess you could say. And of course that doesn't include for my flight out of Mexico to my next country, which you're gonna be seeing next week. So I hope that really answers a lot of your questions, guys. If you have any more, just comment down below. And again, another thing to remember is that these prices are during pandemic times, I guess. So they might go up a little bit if you're not traveling during the pandemic. So hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Give it a like if this was helpful. Comment below any questions you have. And again, guys, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.